Where I am now, better than before. Through those open doors, where I am now, where I am now, I'm in a special place. I'll take a walking place. Where I am now. It's now time for the most talked about radio show in the whole wide world. That's FYI Radio Show with your host, Miss Yolanda, the Lady Hinton. I'm Ed Everett, the co-host. The music that you hear in the background is none other than Miss Yolanda, the Lady Hinton, where I am now. And if you'd like to see us live in WGPL 1350 studio, WMVA 88.9 FM studio, all you have to do is go to Edward Everett's Facebook page, Miss Yolanda, the Lady Hinton Facebook page, and guess what? You can see us live right here in the studio. And if you want to hear us all over the globe, all you have to do is go to 1350 AM, 1400 AM, look for Church Webcast, click and listen live. And now I want to introduce to some and present to others the host of the most talked about radio show in the whole wide world, Miss Yolanda, the Lady Hinton, and a pleasant good morning to you.
Good morning, Mr. E. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood.
Would you, could you, will you be my neighbor?
Let's welcome our neighbors. Let's welcome WGPL 1350 AM listeners.
Peace 95.3 FM, WPCE 1400 AM, WMVA 88.9 FM.
Facebook Live is on and popping. Let's also welcome Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram. Make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe. And we promise we'll shout you out.
Like, share, comment, and subscribe.
Like, share, comment, subscribe. We have 2 channels over there on YouTube, Cristo Records 1, CRISTO Records 1, and at FYI Radio Show host, Yolanda Hinton. Make sure you like, share, comment, subscribe. We will appreciate it, and we will definitely shout you out.
Shout out.
Mr. E.
Yes.
What day is it today?
Today.
Give us a good old hump day.
Today is hump day.
Ooh.
That's what today
Mr. E,
is.
we're going to send him back to the hump day factory because your hump days ain't all that now. Next week, I want y'all to put it on the chat. What number was that from 1 to 10 of a hump day? That was a 0. Mr. E, come back next week, and we want a 10. In the meantime, this is FYI Wednesday segment. What's under the hat? Issues concerning you men.
That's right. What's under the hat? Issues concerning men.
Absolutely. And today, our topic is, are men good communicators? Boy, that's a great topic. And the thing about it is, a lot of times we hear that men are not good communicators, but where did that message of men not being good communicators come from? And are they stereotypes and myths? In our research, Ms. E, they tell us a little bit about men communicating, and they feel as though men communicate just as well as ladies.
That's
or,
right.
That they are able to, gain a platform, understanding, address issues and things like that. Things are just a little different sometimes on the other side. Women, they have a little more emotion. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Just a little bit more things than men do. Men do things different. Women do things different. We're not just talking about communications and relationships, just relationship, man and woman or whatever. We're talking about relationships like in the workforce, in the community, at home with your children. Are men good communicators? In your opinion, Mr. E, what do you think?
Well, like you said earlier, there's a difference between a man and a female, man and women.
Men are good communicators. It depends on who is, or who may, or who it is that you're communicating with. You
Yes.
know, while communication styles vary greatly between individuals regarding the gender, research suggests that men and women often communicate differently. Some studies indicate that men tend to be more direct and solutional orientated, while women may focus on building rapport and expressing emotions. However, these are generalizations, and individual communication skills are influenced by various factors beyond genders, according to research from the Society for Personality and Social Psychology.
Absolutely. Here's some of the common differences: directness and solution oriented approach. Men are often described as being more direct and focus on finding solutions when communicating, especially in task oriented situations. Is that a true fact? You feel like that's a true
That
fact?
is a true
You
fact.
all are want to, you all just like, let's take for instance, when it comes to interpersonal relationships, people feel as though men always trying to solve someone's problem. Oh, try to solve that person problem, trying to make sure things work out well in some cases. It also says that uh, they focus on rapport and emotional expression. This is what women do. Where men are solution oriented, women are supposed to be more rapport and emotional expression. Women are often observed to be more focused on building emotions in their communication. There's a lot of different ways of communicating, some abstract, some concrete language. Research indicates that men tend to use more abstract language while women may use more concrete language. Nonverbal communication, nonverbal cues such as body language and tone of voice play a significant role in communication for both genders. Some studies suggest that women may be more attuned to nonverbal cues than men. Women, you're going to see more. This is what they say. You're going to see more hand movements or facial or head. Just not swinging of the neck and all that stuff. I'm just saying you're going to see a woman kind of express in more, more like she got her body into it, her hands into it, and things like that. Men just stand up straight. They talk. They can get emotional or passionate, but they basically, that they say stern and stand still type of communication.
When men are communicating, folks don't understand how men are, so they always put a label upon a
Mm-hmm.
man. But you got to remember the gender roles and socialization. The history of boys and men socializing is to suppress emotions like fear, sadness, loneliness, while encouraged to express anger.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of men will not when they say something, they try and give the solution to the problem, but they trying to give you the solution, but a lot of folks don't want to hear the solution. They a lot of When you look at the male and female gender, a female gets into her feelings, get into an emotional feelings, and try to dissect why, when, what, and where, and and men are telling you the best of their know-how because of what's going on or what they're saying by solving the problem. But you got to know their language.
Do you think men are misunderstood, and do you think that we don't, pay attention to how we allow our boys to communicate early, like young? Don't cry, don't this. Young girls are very sociable. They're able to, express more easily. They communicate with one another more easily. What about guys? Young boys Are they suppressed? Are they told to, hey, just keep it a man, just be a man. You're not a man, but be a man, and show yourself in a certain type of way. Do we put our boys in a box?
We put them in the box because you don't want a man is not supposed to show per se. Others may on others may look at it. Men are not supposed to show emotions. They're not supposed to fear. They're not supposed to show sadness or loneliness. They're not, they supposed to walk around like everything is honky dory. Everything is all right. The tradition of men is to has been showed as the masculine side. You got to be a man. You got to emphasize your strength, your self-reliance, and emotional, a side of you. You cannot show that you're weak. You're not a man if you're weak. You cannot show that that you have some emotions, that you're going through some things. You just got to be able to be like a watch, Timex watch. You got to be able to take a licking and keep right on ticking, regardless of what you feel or how you may feel. Your side is never the right side.
Oh, really? Men have been communicating forever and ever. But I'm asking specifically about boys when they're young. That you feel as though coming up young, that you had a voice, that you feel like you were understood, that you feel like you could communicate as a young boy?
Well, I felt as if I could communicate as a young boy. Did I? Yes, sometimes. No, sometimes. Because it depends on who's questioning you. Sometimes your father would put the fear in you that you don't want to say anything, and sometimes mama would know how to understand what you're doing, and she would allow you to communicate. But generation has changed now, where it's not whether or not you have emotions, whether or not you're sad, whether or not you're lonely. It's just a side. My side is the right side. Your side is not the right side. It doesn't make a difference what side. It does make a difference who's right and who's wrong in this day and time.
Well, let's talk about. I feel personally that giving children voices early is key. They can stay. You have to make sure they are respectful, and you do have to teach them. Some of them are outspoken and things like that, but I really believe that boys should be able to express themselves, and that they also have to know how to be in a place wherein they know that their parents and those that are older, have the oversight over them. But let's talk about the workforce communication. And let's talk about conflict resolution. I was thinking about Professor Brown, Dr. Brown, and he was talking about when he would go into a setting with men, and he would say, this is our time to really resolve in the workforce and things like that. He would tell men to keep their ego outside of the door. Communication is key, but when ego is in it, and when a man brings ego in, sometimes it's harder to resolve issues. What do you think about workforce communication and how it is key that everybody keeps a balance, stays in place, and then stay respectful as well in the workforce?
Well, you got to remember that all men has testosterone problems.
Why you say that?
When it comes to them being in the same room, they're in competitive. They're in competition with each other. So many men has a tendency of being around one another, and it becomes a competition. You find it started in your homes. It started when your brothers, when you got other siblings. Each one of your man child wants to be in charge. They want to be the lead. After a man child get of age, sometimes he go back to the home where daddy built and made comfortable and wants to take over his home. Because if you look at the Lion King, and when you look at the a story about lions, you'll find that animals, you'll find that all the young, after they done got older enough, they try to go back and they want to take over the territory.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much of a testosterone, a competition, that when men come into the room, they don't leave their ego because they still trying to get their point
That's
across.
amazing. I mean, how can you? Somebody has to resolve. That's why we have leaders and bosses and things like that to absolutely calm the sea, because you have, you do have that thing of competition and ego, and somebody's got to say, okay, let's do it this way, and this is what you are responsible to do. And because you're in the workforce, it has to be a team effort, actually. And sometimes you do have to check yourself at the door and know that it's about work, mission, and vision in that workforce.
And that is true. Men have to come to the workforce knowing that they have a purpose, that they come to do a job. They didn't come here to really and they got to respect those who have leaders that are in charge of you,
Absolutely.
not bump heads with folks that are in charge. You got to be ready to surrender or submit yourself so that you can get the job done.
Absolutely. When people realize what their place is in the workforce and that they have to fulfill that position, then it would go smoother. But when people are on top of each other, they're trying to do the boss's job, they're trying to do everybody else's job but their own, and they don't understand, working together. And so, communications sometimes can get scrambled up, misunderstandings, sometimes unresolved issues. And, it just is not for a good, wholesome place. In our research, as I was looking at some of the pictures and the images, they were showing a lack of communication, in the boardroom and with the bosses and the those that work under, and everybody was on different pages. People were thinking differently. They were not on one accord, and that's where the clash and lack of communication come. And one key thing I really believe, Mr. E, is listening and hearing. A lot of times people don't want to take the time to hear and listen. In these images, they showed a lot of those things wherein, one would say something and the other one was way on another page talking about something else. The two minds weren't together. Nobody was hearing. People were talking, but people do not feel the need to listen. But we do have some communication tips, and effective communication for men involves being clear, concise, and respectful, while also actively listening and being mindful of nonverbal cues. It's important to be present in the conversation, ask open-ended questions, and show empathy. Building emotional intelligence and practicing self-awareness can also significantly improve communication skills. Here's some more breakdown. I think one of them, number one, is what?
Active listening.
Woo,
You
that's
know
it.
what? And I don't want to interrupt. I want to interrupt you here because you got to remember in the workplace,
Mm-hmm.
there has been folks who have been on jobs for such a long
Mm-hmm.
time. This word seniority plays that the field plays a big important role
Yeah.
when men has been on jobs. They don't
Mm-hmm.
want someone who's just getting on the job coming and
Yeah.
telling them what to do. And then they don't want nobody who don't know the job and what they had to endure. That's why so many egos
Mm-hmm.
are hard to get rid of, because men, and I can say this for African American men has been tricked so many times in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
In the workplace, one, by training someone to come and take their place. Why would you train somebody to come take your place, and once you get them to where they are, they don't have the time in? And a lot of men figure that I have put time in, I put this time in, so it's hard for me to sit back and allow someone to make a change.
Well, that's where communications come in. If you, I really feel as though when people or men, feel as though, listen, this don't feel right. That expression, that's what I'm saying. Starting young, being able to talk to our boys about communication and being able to express. Some people just walk around mad. They just walk around looking crazy. Nobody never knows what they're thinking or feeling, and they just think that it's going to be resolved just by you walking around looking crazy. You've got to be able to listen. You got to be able to pay attention. You got to be able to express. You got to be able to take that time, and sometimes it may get heated, but you have to be able to tell a person, look, this is this and this is that. Sometimes it may not work out, in our workforce. Maybe the boss will say, look, you can't come here telling me what to do. But at least you do have that chance of expression and being able to, communicate what's going on in the workforce that you're not pleased with.
Well, when you look at these details here, the details of being an active listening, you focusing on the speaker, paying attention that at what they're saying. You got to listening to the verbal and the nonverbal cues, such as language and tones in their voice. Sometimes folks, when you dealing with men are in the workplace, because there's so much testosterone going in there, there's so much competitiveness, and then in the workplace there's so many people that smiles in your face and cut you. Men has to deal with all those unnormal things versus dealing with things that are right. If folks would only listen and understand what men are saying or what's on their minds, then there'll be better communication and that'd be a better way to help communicate with them.
Absolutely.
The second part is clarity and consistentness. Be direct and to the point. Avoid rambling, especially when communicating with men who may prefer a more direct approach. Some men, they are not clear, they're not clarified, they don't have clarity, or they're not conscious of what they're saying. And so they just rabble off at the mouth and not paying attention to what's going on,
Yes.
and maybe because they don't know how to express themselves.
Well, are men emotional? Everybody talk about how women are men emotional. Do they let their feelings weigh it on their shoulder? Are they just too emotional to even communicate sometimes?
That's the way men are, because they figure that it doesn't take for kids play. In other words, it's not a joking matter when men decided they're going through, when they got some things that nobody understands, or when somebody offend them. Now they're trying to figure out, what you've done, and so, but yet and still they make mockery out of it. It's a joke to them, but they still has to show in the workplace that they got to continue to go on. They just separate
where communications come in.
Men
people
shut down.
People cannot read people's mind. I mean, a man can be emotional, going around looking crazy. But if you don't express what it is, there could never be a resolve. You've got to be able to pull down those barriers, it says, and be able to discuss some things. Sometimes you can take people aside and say, listen, I know this went on and that went on, but can we talk about it? Can we kind of and then just like our first tip, it says active listening. You got to listen. You may have a misunderstanding. You may that verbal or that nonverbal communication, or what you thought that person did, roll their eyes in the meeting and all that, could have been something else. But because there is no communication, no coming together, no meeting of the mind, it can get worse and worse. And people go around in the workforce and they can't get along because, of so many misunderstandings and non-communication.
That's right. And some men, they go around in the workplace because you're not listening to them. It's only a one-sided communication, their side or somebody else's side, and not nobody paying attention to their side. So they sit there grumbling and mumbling because guess what? Nobody pays attention to what they're saying. It's either your way or the highway.
Well, it's one of these tips. It says emotional intelligence. Understand your own emotions. We just mentioned emotions. Being aware of your own feelings can help you communicate them more effectively. Some people have never been able to communicate well.
That's right.
And when they get into situations, they feel like it's everybody but them, and they're the one that's just won't speak up and speak out. They think that people are supposed to read their minds, but you have to understand. You got to be aware of your own feelings. You got to empathize with others because everybody don't understand your way. You got to understand the other person's perspective and feelings. Build trust and rapport. Open communications and empathy can create a stronger connection.
That is the straw that breaks the camel back. Build trust. When you build trust with somebody, and then the trust that you build is shattered. So that's why men shut down, because they trusted. They built trust. They put everything in the basket. And then when they see the trust be shattered, then you're going to find men not communicating. And then number 5, it says respect communication. Be mindful of cultural differences. Different cultures may have different communicating styles. Respect. RESPECT. You got to respect others just as well as you want them to respect you.
Some people don't respect nobody in the workforce. Sometimes men are just as gossipy as women.
That's
and
right.
Sometimes they just buck against the powers that be, and sometimes men can be sneaky and can communicate in a sneaky way and always doing sneaky stuff, and not recognizing that, that is a form of communication. It's like the way you move, non-verbally, the way you act, the way you look, the way you style yourself. You come in and because say you coming into a meeting and you're sitting there and you're acting ugly. Nobody knows what your problem is. You're blaming everybody for your problems and things like that. It makes for the temperature in these conference rooms and things like that. It's a bad fit. Just like Dr. Brown said, those egos and the disrespect and the non-listening. Because when you are in those rooms, that leader, you should be paying attention to what the leader is saying. And if there are any problems, I'm sure there's a way where you can communicate. I'm not too pleased with that, but hey, I'm on board for the bigger, the greater, for the vision. So be respectful of boundaries. Recognize and respect personal space and limits. Avoid blame and judgment. Focus on the issue at hand and work toward a resolution.
And these are good tips for the workplace. These are good tips for the walk for you daily. But you got to remember, we have to remember also that there are so many men that has a problem with their ego. There are so many men that are walking around that says that you're talking about them, or you're smiling in their face, and you're going behind their back. You're two-faced, you're backstabber, because some of the things that they may be saying in these board meetings is what they call get back. I'm gonna get at you because I heard somebody say this about you. Somebody said this, and and it may be true, but but the thing about it is some men know who they communicate with, and some men who they talk with have they relied on somebody and they shared some things with, and so now it's open, it's in the air, brought into the meeting. So now some folks figure that the cat that I talked to, I relied on, has told my secrets.
I was talking to someone yesterday, and they was talking about men in the workforce and how messy, messy, messy.
Men can be
Men can
messy.
be messy, emotional. They can do a whole lot of stuff that is against what the vision of a business. They can just be a mess. But I'm
That's
saying,
the leadership in men. You got to remember, men are leaders. All men are leaders, and when you get a bunch of headstrong leaders into the same room that had some leadership, have been in charge, have one of the hardest thing is to give somebody some put somebody in charge, and now that they doing it the way that they know how to do it, or just like going to some of these stores, the rules are changed.
yes,
They do things just to fit them and not the company policy. But if folks would only go by the company policy and not changing rules to fit them, to make this an easy work environment, so they allow that rule to go on, but they're not concerned about the policy.
well, I tell you what, communications is key. You can do it better. Sometimes we don't get it right, but these tips can definitely help men to do better in the workforce, in their relationships, in the community. And hey, who wouldn't want to communicate better? But it takes skill and takes time. Listen, it's Wednesday, it's hump day. We're going to see you on Fun Friday, Women's Issues. Woo! See you then. Have a wonderful day.
For the past 30 minutes, you've been listening to the most talked about radio show in the whole wide world. That's FYI Radio Show with your host, Miss Yolanda Lady Hinton. I'm Ed Everett. Don't forget to join us Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 9:30 to 10, right here on your Inspirational Leaders, CBC, your number one Black media network. And for more information, give us a call at 757-714-7861, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Good morning, Miss Sheila Robbins. How are you? Thank you so much for joining us, and all you all that are on Instagram. We have Pretty41500. Thank you for joining us. If I don't see your name, say something in the chat, and we will definitely respond. You all are a blessing. Thank you so much for your support. Our topic are men good communicators. You all know what they can do. Sometimes they are. Sometimes they get it wrong, but sometimes, with a little work, a little help and a little understanding, they can get it right. One of the questions that we asked was about the stereotypes and the message that's sent through the media and things like that about men and communication. Sometimes we can put stuff out there and can't reel it back, meaning, you can't put the message out there that men can't communicate. They're not good communicators. Men can communicate just like anybody else. They just communicate differently. And then there are times when they can't communicate word to sent, and they have to learn skills and tips like anybody else. And so, I think communication starts early, being able to let a person be open and be able to, kind of like address issues and stuff. You got to teach people how to communicate so things can get better. Look, communication between older men and younger men. We got to talk about that at another time. But, intergenerational communications can be challenging. Older people sometimes want to tell the younger people what to do, and younger people sometimes don't have the respect for the older ones. They feel like, hey, you don't know what you're talking about, old man. You don't know what you're doing, old man. And it can be a problem. But styles can be different. Different stem from varying communication styles and preference shaped by technology and life experience. If you notice, the younger generation is more into social media and things like that. You have the older people that some of them don't even deal with social media. So you may have a break in communication. at times. So, communication go a long way. Older people, older men versus younger men. There's a way of communicating, a way of understanding as well. Look, we got some great upcoming shows,
Got to
uh,
go.
and we will give you those things. Hot topics coming soon, and a lot more. Don't forget to follow us on social media, and don't forget that you can be a special guest sponsor or intern with FYI Radio Show. All right, Ms. D, give them that contact information.
If you'd like to be a special guest or sponsor, you give us a call at 757-714-7861, or you can email us at fyradioshow@gmail.com.
Okay, see y'all soon. Have a wonderful, wonderful hump day.